Hey, welcome to Acting is Reacting with me, JSB. Or you can call me Joe if you prefer to have a proper whole name. Well, if you want a whole name, go the full hog and go with Joseph. I'm easy. Anyway, today I'm not reacting or listening to or watching anything, but following on from a couple of weeks ago where I did a couple of live gig reviews, which seemed to go down pretty well, I now bring you my first, but I hope not last, batch of new album reviews because we're only midway through March, and 2025 is already a very strong year for new music, which is, of course, something I'm very passionate about and will continue to champion on the channel, whether anybody watches it or not. Yeah. I'm not looking at you because you are watching it. Thanks. Honestly, if I can just nudge one person in the direction of some great new music that they end up loving, then I'll be very happy. I don't ask for much, do I? So maybe that person could be you and you can even tell me about it when it happens. Anyway, normally at this point in the year, I've bought maybe two or three new albums, one of them usually by Magnum. But this year, I've already got stacked like this, and that's only the tip of the iceberg. There's more over there, there's more on the way. Not to mention the albums I've listened to but not bought, more on one of those later. Um, and of course, all the great albums that you know about that I haven't even heard of yet, which I'm sure well, I'll try and check out some of them at some point, and they might well end up in this pile as well. So yeah, do feel free to drop comments or suggestions of anything that you think I should check out from 2025. Anyway, today I'm going to tackle four of the albums that came out in the first couple of months of this year. Um, this is my first time with this sort of thing, so I haven't quite defined what my format will be. So if you'll allow me the touch of experimentation, um, do let me know you like about what's to come. But equally, any helpful, considered feedback is always welcome, either in the comments below or to the channel email, which is on your screens now, air.jsbyt@gmail.com. That's air.jsbyt@gmail.com. First one to email that address gets a nice prize of a reply saying thanks. What more can you ask for? Anyway, for example, should I continue to do what I'm doing today, which is to do a bunch of albums in a batch, or just do one album per video and do more of them, for example, like what Pete does on Sea of Tranquility, for those who know that channel, and if you don't and you're a music lover, where you been? Anyway, the four albums I'm looking at today cover all the genres. Well, not quite, but there's AOR and classic rock, alt rock and indie singer-songwriter stuff, and some prog metal as well. So I suppose the chances of anyone, and I include myself in that, loving all of these albums is fairly small, but I would just ask you to enter with an open mind, and hopefully I can spark some magic desire in you to give something new a go, whether you've come here for a specific review or maybe YouTube simply force fed this content into your feed and it's playing on autoplay and you don't know who this guy is. Hi, I've just told you I'm Joe. Cheer. That's it. If you really only want to check out one of the four, I may or may not have worked out how to do timestamps. Anyway, failing that, I will have the album image on screen throughout each segment, so you can just zip on through until you find the one that you're after and go from there. Great. So, I'm going to start with the 15th studio album from Welsh alt rockers Manic Street Preachers. The album is Critical Thinking and came out on Valentine's Day, February the 14th. As with so many albums these days, it was preceded by four singles. But I didn't actually hear any of those until the album itself actually came out because, and this may seem shocking to some people, this is the first Manic's album I have actually ever heard. It's been well received by fans and critics alike, and it was some of those fans on the Marillion forum talking about this that made me decide to give it a go, and I'm glad I did. So thanks to them, especially Kev, for that. So probably most people know the Manics more than I do, or maybe you've never heard of them if you're in America. It's very possible. But apparently, there's a couple of different things about this album. Bassist Nicky Wire takes lead vocals on 3 of the 12 tracks, and main lead singer and guitarist James Bradfield has contributed lyrics to 3 of the 12 tracks. Not the same 3. That would be weird. Anyway, both of those things are unusual, I gather, and will mean more to long term followers of the band than it does to me. as I've only got this one to go by. So what do I think of it? Um, this is the level of analysis that you can expect from me. It's really good. Yeah. No, I will break it down a bit more than that. Okay, so we kick off with the title track, which is, of course, Critical Thinking. And that's one of the lead vocals from Nicky on here. And it's a clever state of the world type song with some pretty decent lyrics. Decline and Fall is next up and was the first single. And I can definitely hear why it was the first single. I'd go as far as to say perhaps it should have opened the album, but you know, it's instantly catchy and memorable, and Bradfield's vocals are excellent. Now, if you're new here, vocals often make or break tracks, albums, bands, you name it. So expect me to mention them a lot. Now, I don't mind Nicky's vocals. I know he's kind of a Marmite figure in terms of his singing with some fans, but yeah, James is definitely the front man for a reason. Um, the third member of the band, by the way, remains drummer Sean Moore. There's it's a pick of the three of them there. I'd only be able to guess as to who's who because uh, there's no helpful note to say that, but I guess long-term fans don't need one. Um, most people buying this are probably well aware of who's who, but hey, ignorant man in the house. Anyway, I won't go track by track entirely for this one, or indeed for any of the albums that I'm looking at today, but there is nothing skippable here. Maybe the last track, One Man Militia, is my least favourite, and that's another Nicky fronted tune, but it's also got good lyrics, so it's not a write off by any stretch. But I will throw out Brushstrokes of Reunion, People Ruin Paintings, and Deleted Scenes as being other highlights for my untrained ears at least. And at 12 tracks in 42 minutes, it's basically the perfect length. Another thing you'll hear me refer to a lot is album length. Um, so 4 stars from me, and that's on the basis of, as I say, uh, no familiarity with the band at all, as far as I know, really. Not even their well-known albums and songs have made an impact because they, came out big in that period where I wasn't listening to anything new and I was concentrating on catching up on all the music from before I was born that I'd missed out on. MSP fans, please do let me know where this sits in the catalogue for you, and if you're able to limit suggestions to just 2 earlier albums for me to check out from them next, well, I'll be much obliged. Now, for something completely different. Let's head to Sweden for the 7th album, and again, the first that I've heard, from the Night Flight Orchestra. Give Us the Moon. So, this is the album. Pretty smart little digipack, and you've got animated pick of the band there, and of course, looked at with all the lyrics and credits, etc. So I'm happy with all of that. Again, packaging is another thing that I like. If you just give me a folded piece of cardboard with a disc in it, that's not what us physical buyers are looking for. Right. Anyway, I digress. So unusual for me to do that. This is, how do I describe it? Basically, joyous and uplifting Scandi AOR, basically, from an 8-piece band fronted by Bjorn Speed Street. He's the guy in the middle with the aviation gear. Hopefully I got that in the more or less the right spots. Who knows? I'll find out when I do the edit. Anyway, he also fronts the very different Mental Act Soilwork, who, again, I know very little of. I've literally heard one song. We played them on a live stream that I do on weekends just to give them a listen. Anyway, this band, Night Flight Orchestra, are very much in classic 80s AOR mode, but it's not derivative like some of these kinds of bands can be, and nor does it fall into the trap that others have of being over ironic with their nostalgic styling, shall we say. They're having fun. It is a lot of fun, but they're taking it seriously at the same time. It's a fine line to tread, but I think they've nailed it here, and it's not purely retro, although it's close to that, but there are some modern sensibilities in the mix as well. There's also a bit of quirkiness in that there are several airline-style tannoy announcements dotted throughout the album, including the very first 30 seconds, which is basically telling the members of the band to hurry up and get on the plane. And then the tracks take us not just to the moon, like the title suggests, and back from there to more terrestrial destinations, including Melbourne, Australia, obviously, Paris, and Toronto. I don't know if this is an ongoing theme for the band's earlier efforts, but it all works and gives the album a really great flow. In fact, the sequencing of the tracks is pretty much seamless, and that's a bit of a lost art these days as well. Now, I only found out while prepping for this review. Yes, I prepped for it. Really, I know. That, and this is actually serious. In 2022, their founding guitarist and their main songwriter, David Anderson, passed away at the hideously young age of 47, which must have been a shock to the system, to put it mildly. Again, as far as a newcomer to the band can tell, they've rallied to the challenge of carrying on here. There's one presumably leftover track that Anderson had written that's like the beating of a heart. But the other band members, especially Streed, have stepped up on the songwriting front and not missed a beat, it would seem. Now, one thing that I would say about this band is that for a band with two guitarists, who between them wrote a fair chunk of the music, the overall sound is pretty keyboard heavy. And for me, that's just fine. I used to play keys, so up my alley. And there is plenty of tasty guitar work as well, but just don't come into this expecting a shredding guitar fest. If you're guitars, 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 and that's all you like, this might be not quite your cup of tea. Uh, but the musicianship throughout all the instruments is basically outstanding, particularly the drumming from. I'm going to try and pronounce names on of a Swedish band. This is dangerous. Jonas Kulsback. Yeah, I probably mangled at least half of that. Anyway, so we start off, as I said, with Final Call, which is really shouldn't give me an excuse to mispronounce the names because they go through all their surnames and are asking them to board, essentially. That only takes about 30 seconds before we get into Stratus, which is the first proper track of the album. And if you've got 5 minutes, give that track a listen because if you like it, you will like the album. And if you don't like it, well, you can work it out from there. Should have been the first single, as far as I'm concerned, but they went with the next track, Shooting Velvet, instead. Now, that one reminds me of Early Lake, if that means anything to anybody, especially the keyboard line. That could be right off Paradise Island album. Really good. Anyway, I won't, as I say, go through all the tracks, but as I say, David Anderson's posthumous contribution, like The Beating of a Heart, is another really catchy tune. Melbourne May I takes us to Australia, close to my old stomping ground. Miraculous is miraculous in that it is just a total earworm. I mean, it's in my head now, and I'm about to sing it for you if I don't carry on and move on to something else. So uh, we've got Cosmic Tide, which is a bit more rocking than some of the other tracks, but just as catchy. The title track's great. A Paris Point of View takes us into a bit of funk and disco, but in a good way. And yes, there is a good way of doing that sort of thing, it would seem. Runaways is a cool track, although its intro is a bit. Actually, I'll talk about that in a second. And we end with an epic in the form of the wonderfully titled Stewardess, Empress, Hot Mess, and the Captain of Pain. So, are there any downsides? Well, barely, but yeah. The intro to Runaways is total cringe. As I said, there's those kind of tannoy announcements along the way, and those work just fine. But this one opens with kind of like 30 seconds of dialogue, and it feels like it belongs in a bad musical. Um, this guy's getting into a cab, and the conversation between him and the cab driver, he doesn't quite know where he's going, and the cab driver asks him to be a bit more specific, and he says, I can't be more specific than that, and then is immediately more specific than that, and says, take me to this hotel, I'll start my journey from there. And the cab driver goes, your journey? And he says, yeah, I used to live in the city a long time ago. Oh my God, it's awful. It's really bad. But that's the only thing on this album that is out of place. And the rest of the track is great. Ah, dear. The only other thing I could say on the downside is that the band has two female backing vocalists, but they are not very upfront in the mix, and you barely know that they're there at some points when they definitely are there if you listen carefully. So minor quibbles, but it would have been nice to hear a bit more from them. But yeah, really, those are just quibbles. The production's excellent. The songs and performances are strong and memorable. The vocals, in particular, are simply outstanding. And bottom line is, it's just great fun. Uh, I don't even mind that it runs to just under an hour. I'd normally be looking to cut two or maybe three tracks and get it down to 40, 45 minutes. But aside from that cheesy first 30 seconds of Runaways, I don't think I'd be able to hack anything out of this at all and be happy. So it's an easy 4.5 stars from me. And again, as with the Manic Street Preachers crew, Night Flight Orchestra fans, I would love to know from you which two of the previous 6 albums I should go to next. I know you're just going to tell me to get all of them, aren't you? Yeah, fine. I'll do that. Eventually. I'm not going to have the time. It's hard enough listening to all these new albums, let alone finding catalogues that you had to go back to and exploring. First world problems, right? All right, let's switch gears completely yet again to an album that is basically as good as that, but anything but fun. This is the third album from UK indie rock singer-songwriter Sam Fender, People Watching, following his 2019 debut Hypersonic Missiles and the 2021 follow-up 17 Going Under. So yeah, you can see here's a catalogue that I have in its entirety. That makes a change for today, doesn't it? So yeah, basically I have been a fan of Sam since the second album. And I would say he's probably one of the top current artists out there. I've seen him live twice and he's brilliant. And in a rare example of the general public agreeing with me, all three of these albums have topped the UK charts. Not done so much in other parts of the world, especially America, but I think people are slowly catching on. Hopefully, if you're someone who hasn't encountered Sam before, this might spur you on to give him a listen. So he's described this particular album as containing colourful stories and observations of everyday characters living their everyday but often extraordinary lives. And that's a fair summation, really. The title track was the first single released, and I did a first time listen at the time, which you can check out after if you fancy. I'll post it on a link at the end of this vid. And that duly became his third top 5 single. Yeah, I know. I'm listening to an artist who has top 5 singles. What has the world come to? Anyway, that might be the best track on the album, but that's not a slight on the rest of the track list because, again, this is strong from top to bottom. A couple of tracks even might warrant me reading a couple of lyrics to you. So the second song is Nostalgia's Lie, which is it's looking at, you probably heard this, you might have even thought it yourself. I want to go back to this time where everything was simpler and better, but really that time is just because you're 7, and that's not how the world works. And the world at that time probably wasn't better than it is now. It was just different. But I mean, he's got away with words. He goes, "What is this place? Can you take me back to somewhere, darling, where I feel safe? Down the violet path and the oak tree, spinning and laughing. Was it ever what I thought it truly was?" And yeah, the answer is it's not. Um, and he accepts within the song that he has to live in the now, for better or for worse. Um, so that's a great track. Chin Up follows that, and that's again heavy thematic themes. It's about mental health and putting your best foot forward and keeping it together, whatever's going on. Um, Then we've got Arm's Length, which was the second single and yet another hit, not top 5, but top 20. And it deals with a guy, maybe Sam, maybe a character, who's getting it on with a girl, but willing or able to offer all of himself to the liaison. And it's got the refrain, "Do you have to know me inside out?" It sounds a lot better than that on the album, obviously. A little bit closer is another top 30 singles entry from this album. There's another 2 tracks that have scraped lower in the charts, so I don't really understand how streaming and charts work these days. But yeah, 5 tracks from this album have charted in the UK already. 3 of them pretty decently high. Yeah, but a little bit closer is uh, it's one that I relate to a lot because it's dealing with atheism, um, but from the point of view of someone who's still got a level of spirituality to them. So lyrics here are: I can't live under the notion that there's no reason at all for all this beauty in motion. I don't buy the deity spoke of, but in love there's something to hold, and I get a little bit closer to it. Yeah, and you can find that in all sorts of things. Um, yeah, that's making me think of stuff which we won't do because um, hmm, getting sniffly, which is fine because I'm about to talk about the final track on the album, which is called "Remember My Name." Now that one is written for Sam's grandparents from the point of view of his granddad looking after his grandma when she was suffering through dementia at the end of her life. So that one, let's put it this way, I'm not sure I actually like it, but it does make me cry. So yeah, job done. So for those wanting to get a sense of the sound of this album, instrumentation is mainly Sam on guitars and piano, but um, he's got a solid rhythm section behind him, and there's tracks with strings that are beautifully arranged. There's sax on about half of the tracks, and other things set up like mandolin, glockenspiel, Hammond organ. That final track, "Remember My Name," is just a brass band backing it to add to the kind of uh, old time feel of his grandparents. And again, like I said, I'm not sure I like it, but it works. It really does. I would say that this is primarily a song-based album, and it is more singer-songwriter with kind of indie rock production than anything else. So the musicianship here isn't flashy; it's thoughtful and textured, and it just serves the themes and messages behind the songs. And it's all served up with his gorgeous emotive voice on top that is so real. Um, and it contains enough of his North Shields accent to hammer home. I think, yeah, if there's one word to describe this album, authentic. Um, Now, I suspect 17 Going Under, both the song and the album, are going to be revered as Sam's masterpieces in future years, looking back on his entire catalogue. But this is more than a worthy follow up to that fine album. So, between the Night Flight Orchestra and this is probably better album of the two. But based solely on the fact that I'm going to get more pleasurable listening hours out of the NFO, I'm awarding People Watching 4.25 stars, so 4.25 stars, though it probably will get up to 4.5 as well after a few more plays. Now, bear in mind, my star rating system is very much aligned to my own enjoyment of an album rather than to be taken as a statement of its actual quality from a more subjective, objective. I always get those two mixed up, from whatever point of view that is, if you see what I mean. There can be a significant difference between how good you know an album is and how much you like it, as we shall see with my final review of the day. And this is the one that I don't own for reasons that will become obvious as we go along. It is Dream Theater's Parasomnia. Now, this is, of course, the Prog Metal Giant's 16th studio album. I do have about a quarter of the previous ones, and significantly, it marks the return of Mike Portnoy to the drum stall for the first time since Black Clouds and Silver Linings in 2009. Coincidentally, the most recent Dream Theater album that I own. So yeah, I didn't follow DT through the Mike Mangini era. I was too busy trying to keep up with the other 97 bands that Mike Portnoy was doing in the meantime. But it can't be denied that with him back in the band, this album sounds like a rejuvenated and re-energized band. When the first single, Night Terror, dropped, again I reacted to that, although the music portion's been subsequently deleted by the YouTube gods. I thought it was very promising, and it is one of the highlights, but there's others. Honestly, it is actually strong conceptually, musically, and lyrically from start to finish. Vocally, it's okay. I've never been a James LaBrie fan, and I'm not entirely sure, but I don't want to lay it at his feet that I'm not buying this album, but if a different singer was involved, it might make the difference between me enjoying this band a lot more than I do, and indeed as much as I feel I should. But we are where we are. So, a few noteworthy tracks here. Night Terror, as I mentioned. The album, as you may have guessed from the title, is tied together conceptually by themes of sleep disorders. Um, I mean, Dream Theater. You'd think that they'd have done a concept album along these lines well before now, but here we go. So, Dead Asleep is the most compelling story for me. It's about when sleepwalking turns darker and you get into the realm of sleep killing. It's a pretty heavy album overall, but Bend the Clock is the one softer song on here, and that's probably my favourite. It's got an absolutely gorgeous guitar solo from John Petrucci at the end of it, which is sublime. And then the final track is a 20-minute epic called The Shadow Man Incident. And there you've got some of Jordan Rudetta's finest keyboard work on the album. So I listened to this on Spotify a couple of times, and then I listened again along with Jim on his channel. That's Jim Newsted, if you don't know him. I will link to the first part of his four-part listen to this album in the links below if I remember. And if I don't, remind me and then I'll put it in there later. Anyway, um, he listened to the vinyl version, and I don't know if it was just the fact that he was breaking it up into four sides, or dreams as they've labelled each side, but it did make it a bit easier to digest that way. Plus, it's always enjoyable having someone to listen along with, isn't it? That's why you listen to stuff with me all the time, right? Yeah, good. I'm not about to start investing in vinyl again. No, 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 no. It's obviously a long album. It's 72 minutes, but I don't know if it was the listening with Jim experience that did it, but to me, it actually felt justified and like a proper old school double album, not just another stupidly long CD like we got uh, mostly throughout the 90s and noughties. So here's where I get to my star rating, and fans will go, "What?" So I'm giving it 3.5 stars, but that's based on how much I enjoy it. For fans and for prog metal albums in general, this is an easy 4.5 star album, maybe even edging to 5 star for some people. And I'm not going to deny that it is fantastic. It's just not quite enough of my cup of tea to warrant a purchase. But that's it. If someone sent me a copy, then I wouldn't throw it away. But yeah, in a year where there are so many new releases to check out, it's just not made the shopping basket, I'm afraid. But yeah, if you are a prog metal fan and somehow have not heard any Dream Theater, I'd say this is a great one to start with. It shows you all of their best qualities and gives you an absolute feel for what they do. Uh, but yeah, it seems unlikely, but you never know, do you? No. Okay, well, that is almost it. Thanks to any and all who made it through all of that with me. And please do let me know what you think about any of these albums if you've heard them already, or if you're heading off to give them a listen now based on my ramblings. I would love to know what you think. Um, I certainly intend to review more albums as and when I can. And looking at how the year's going, there's no way I'm going to get to everything. But if there's something in particular you'd like my perspective on, let me know and I'll see what I can do. Until then, and especially if you've never heard any Sam Fender before, why not check out me checking out People Watching for the first time, one side of my head or the other. In any case, thanks for watching today and bye for now, but I hope not for long.
Acting is reacting. This does not mean acting again.